Sullivan. I'm a VCU graduate with a Master's of Teaching in Elementary Education. Last time we discussed student motivation and how it's a key factor in success in a classroom. Today we're going to discuss in a little bit more detail what student motivation entails and learn several strategies for how you can motivate your elementary students, as well as discuss how and why those strategies work and how to include them in your classroom. So let's review student motivation and its components. Motivation is a student's desire to learn and complete tasks. This desire is both intrinsic and extrinsic and is a key factor in how successful a student will be. The intrinsic motivation is when a student is motivated for an internal reward. These students work hard because it's what they want to do. It gives them a good feeling and they work towards their own expectations. Extrinsic motivation is when a student is motivated for an external reward. These students will work strictly for good grades because it's expected of them, for praise or reward of some type. These students will need the most guidance and feedback in your classroom. Regardless of a student's type of motivation, it's important for you as the teacher to meet their motivational needs and to help them focus, participate, and not distract themselves or others. So we need to discuss why and how you can bring the concept of focusing on student motivation into your classroom to help your students achieve. Intrinsically and extrinsically motivated students will need different types of reward systems to help them succeed. For your intrinsically motivated students, your part as the teacher is a little bit easier in terms of getting them to complete work and to participate. For these students, your focus will mainly be on challenging them academically, using effective teaching methods, and creating and implementing successful lesson plans. Now, for your extrinsically motivated students, your job is going to involve the same effective teaching and the same type of lesson planning as you had for your intrinsic students. But you're also going to need to determine what each student will need on their individual level to be motivated. For some of those students, it's going to involve reinforcement in the form of positive verbal feedback. This is something you're going to need to give them before, during, and after an assignment. It helps keep them on track, it helps keep them motivated, and it gets them to continue going when they start to feel a slight hesitation in how well they're doing. Behavior charts, such as this one, and it's probably backwards for you all actually, it can be very helpful for some students. It combines a visual tracker of their progress in completing work and behaving appropriately, and it helps motivate them to move up in the chart and receive rewards and special accommodations. I'll review the chart very quickly with you. So a student would start every day on the area that says good job. This just tells the student to keep up the good work and that I'm proud of them. If a student becomes off task, they're first going to go to warning, where it tells them to please refocus and lets them know that I think they can do it. Next, the student would move down to off task if they continue to not motivate themselves to learn and stay on track. This would require a student-teacher conference so we can discuss what happened and a letter of apology to either myself, themselves, or the students they distracted. The red zone, where no student wants to be, is where I would need to call home, or you would call home as the teacher, and the student would lose any extra computer time that they may have earned. Now, on the other side of our chart, when students are working towards the goals that they need to be working and completing their assignments, they could move up from good job to above and beyond, where they were doing more than they should have, and I really feel that, or you would feel that they were stepping out of their comfort zone. This would allow them an extra rotation, extra computer time, or something they enjoy doing, as well as a sticker. Amazing. This is something that you're not going to give out very often, but this is where a student would pick something from the prize bin and they would go on the wall of fame. This type of behavior chart is very good for motivating your extrinsic learners, as they can keep track of what they're doing, and it lets them see how they can move through the stages throughout the day. You can go to every single one of these levels depending on how you're doing. So now we need to discuss some various things to keep in mind and their factors when you're motivating students. The type of motivation a student comes into your classroom with can have a lot to do with factors and situations that you as a teacher have no control over. The student's home life and family situation can play a huge role in motivation. Students who come from a stable family, not dealing with poverty or domestic issues, are more likely to be intrinsically motivated and seen as better students with less problems. You need to try to take the student's home life into consideration and meet the emotional needs of your students. The past educational experiences of your students can also have a huge impact on how well their motivation is. Students who come into your classroom having had an ineffective or even a bad teacher are going to be less likely to be extrinsically or intrinsically motivated either way. You're going to need to review your students' school records to help see what type of learners you might have. And you also want to keep in mind that it can take several months for a student to become motivated to try academically if their attempts were ridiculed in the past. Keep at it. Now, the third factor is the factor that you as the teacher have the most ability to change. And this is the student's self-esteem and their self-image. Now, you're not going to have much of an impact on their home life or their past experience, but you can make these students feel good about themselves. Some examples of helping your students have a positive image to help their motivation is to praise them, to make sure that you're giving them manageable assignments, letting them know that you value their input, and having them work with other peers in areas that they excel at where they can act as the teacher or a tutor. So in conclusion, I want to end our conversation by recapping what we discussed. As a classroom teacher, your job on the surface seems like it's just to teach new information, but a whole host of factors go into being an effective teacher. Today we talked about how student motivation is one key factor in your students' achievement. We discussed intrinsic and extrinsic motivation of your students, and we also looked at various factors to keep in mind with your students, such as family life, past educational experiences, and the student's self-image. I hope you learned a little bit more about motivation and consider using some of these strategies in your own classroom. Thanks.